ctrl-alt-rees.
Hi everyone, Reese here again and welcome back to the channel. So I want to do something slightly different today, just more of a kind of vlog style video. It's not something I've done before and it's not something I intend to do a lot of in the future unless there's a lot of demand for it. But I've just passed 100 subscribers on my channel and I thought I'd put something together just to thank everyone, firstly. I really do appreciate your support so far and everyone sharing the videos and liking them and of course hitting that subscribe button. I can't believe the channel's grown so quickly, to be honest. It's really encouraging and it's really fantastic to find so many like-minded people out there. It's something I keep finding over and over again on my various social media channels, and YouTube was a bit of an experiment for me, and I'm just really pleased that it's gone so well, and I want to keep putting out lots of great content about my collection and about my projects, and sharing it with everyone and perhaps giving you something to watch on your lunch break or when you have a spare 5 minutes just to see what I'm up to, really. So over the weekend we had some friends over and they'd seen a couple of my videos and they had absolutely no idea that I had all of this stuff, and they were really interested in coming up and having a look around the room and asking me some questions about my various computers and my games and things, and were genuinely interested in what I had and also in the projects that I'd been working on and the stuff that I'm working on at the moment and stuff I have planned for the future. So I thought, well, that's a great inspiration for a 100 subscriber special video, really. Why don't I just reenact that and spread it to a wider audience and show people what I have here, what I'm working on and what I'm all about, really. So yeah, I mean, this is a very small gaming room I have here. I'm not really sure how to refer to this room, to be honest. We tend to call it my office because when I first set up my business 8 years ago, I worked from home and this was my office. In the intervening years, it's been taken over by my collection of old computers and consoles and games and things. It's a very small room. It's only 2.3 by 2.9 meters, which is about 7'6" by 9'6". So I have to be very careful with space. I like to have things on display. I like to have my computers all working and ready to go at a moment's notice should I want to fire up a game and play something quickly. So I don't tend to have a lot of stuff in storage, although I do have a few bits and bobs at the moment, but I'm kind of working on that. So I think without further ado, let's get started with the tour. So I'll start with the side of the room that you haven't seen so far in any of my videos, and it's my shelves where I keep my Atari collection. Now, unfortunately, due to the limitations of the size of the room, this is all I'm going to have to be able to show you in this shot. I've taken some wider panning shots which I'll show you just as I kind of explain what everything is. So on the top shelf I have my Atari 5200 and trackball. The Atari 5200 was of course featured in one of my very first videos where I rebuilt the controllers with the Best Electronics Gold Contact Kit. I also have my collection of ST format magazines, which was a British Atari ST magazine in the 80s and the 90s. My Art of Atari book, excellent book, which I can highly recommend. Also a couple of other bits and bobs just stored up there, just out of the way at the moment. So this second shelf down is where things start to get a bit more interesting. I have my Atari 2600 VCS, and this is a Sunnyvale Heavy Sixer model. This has been featured quite heavily in some of my videos and my social media posts in the past, so I'm sure you're familiar with it. I also have my C100 Pong machine. This is from 1975. I composite modded this machine myself. I'm going to be featuring that in an upcoming video, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Really love that thing. It's one of my absolute favourite things in my collection, along with the 2600. A really cool bit of kit. Also have my C140, which is the Super Pong, which has 4 games built in. This one I haven't got around to modifying yet, but I will be putting something together just to show how to do that. It's exactly the same process as the other Pong machine. Also on this shelf I have just a few boxed joysticks that I picked up over the years, and my Atari 2800. Now this is the Japanese version of the Atari 2600. Exactly the same spec, apart from the controllers, which are quite interesting. They're basically joysticks and paddles in one unit, so really interesting thing there, and I'm definitely going to be featuring that in the near future. On this shelf I just have some boxed games for the Atari Jaguar and for the 2600. I'm not a huge collector of boxed games, but I like to have a few on the shelves just because they look nice. Obviously also in the case of the Jaguar there isn't a flash cart available for it yet, so it's the only way to play games on that system. I also have these limited edition Atari themed cars that Hot Wheels did a few years back. They were only available in the US, so I had to import those as well. So just moving down to the next shelf, here we have the Atari 800, which was released in 1979. This, along with the 400, was the original Atari 8-bit home computer. Have the 810 floppy drive for that, 5¼ inch floppy drive, and the numeric keypad thingy as well. Also have the Touch Me, which you may have seen in my previous video where I unboxed that and had a play with it. Atari's first handheld game, that's from 1978. And also just to finish everything off, just a little Lego model there of a little 1970s scene with a Atari 2600 and a TV. I bought that from a seller on Instagram. I'll try and see if I can dig up the details and post a link down below for that one. So I'm going to struggle to get into this shop because space is just so tight down here, but I'll just show you this bottom shelf finally. So I have my Atari 7800 here. This is the European version of the 7800 that came with the CX78 control pads. I just put out a video where I actually modified these joypads to work with the ST and the 2600, so really cool little controller, completely unknown outside of Europe. As you can see, I also have some boxed games for the 7800, although nothing like a complete set. These are really cheap to pick up on eBay, so great system to collect for if you're just getting into collecting. And some really good arcade conversions on there as well. Then we move on to the XE game system, or the Atari XE GS. Probably my favourite Atari system, although it's very hard to choose. This is the consoleized version of the 8-bit computer line. As you can see, mine has the box and the light gun and everything else. Really fantastic little console, has the detachable keyboard so it can run all of the 8-bit home computer software on there as well. And it has an SIO port, so it works with the floppy drives and modems and printers and all the other peripherals that Atari put out for the 8-bit computers over the years. Finally, just there, tucked away down in the corner, completely neglected, here's my classic Mac, Apple Mac SE. Really need to get that up and running again. I assume it still works. It worked the last time I used it, but has some fragile things like a SCSI hard disk, and I know the logic boards can fail in those as well, so maybe I'll look at that at some point in the future, but it's not a priority for me at the moment. So just quickly, on this side of the room I have my piano. I've been learning for about 3 years now. I don't have any plans for any musical content in the future on this channel, but you never know. If there's enough demand, I'm sure I could bust out a tune or two for you. I also have a collection of various toys and things that I picked up over the years. Nothing too special there. My oscilloscope that I use for my electronics projects, of course, and a couple of MIDI modules which I'm planning on using in some future videos, just to show off some MIDI capabilities of some of these machines. This is my collection of Famicom games. So just starting at the top, we have the Family Basic keyboard add-on for the Famicom, which turns it into a full-featured basic computer for learning programming. I also have both of the Family Computer Robot games and of course the robot itself. This was called Rob in the West, but the original version released in Japan was just called the Family Computer Robot. A very rare thing. I'm definitely going to be making a video on that in the future because it's just a fun thing to play with. Just rounding off just round the corner, I have the data recorder, which is the cassette interface for the Famicom for use with the Family Basic keyboard, and also the 3D system. Now this gun-like contraption is essentially the Japanese equivalent of the NES Zapper that we got in the West. As you can see, it's a lot more gun-like. It looks like a revolver. Had so many problems getting this thing through customs. It was nearly thrown in the bin a few times. Now, to argue with them, they decided to class it as an imitation firearm, which of course it isn't. But eventually, it got through to me. I've heard of others that have had the same problem, so that there is hope for you if you're going through this at the moment. I know Nostalgia Nerd posted on Twitter quite recently that he was also going through the same issues and was trying to find someone in Japan to sort of secretly forward it on to him. I also have the Power Glove here, world famous Power Glove, that was available in the West as well, of course. And I have the collection of Namco arcade conversions, which are all really excellent, top quality arcade conversions for the Famicom. Definitely a collection worth having and worth seeking out if you're getting into Famicom collecting. So just on this next shelf down, I have my Famicom Disk System games. I have a couple of Famicom Disk Systems hanging around as well. I was refurbishing them and rebelting them and recalibrating them and selling them on eBay at one point, but it was just far too time consuming, so I've given up on that now. Maybe I'll revisit it at some point in the future just to shift the few that I have. But yeah, good collection of Famicom Disk System games. As far as I'm aware, the vast majority of those are working. I do play them occasionally, but to be honest, they're quite a lot of hassle, and the EverDrive flash cart supports the disk system images anyway, so to be honest, that's how I tend to play them. Just moving on, I've got a lot of the original Nintendo games for the Famicom here, all three main Mario games, and of course Mario Golf, Mario Tennis, Dr. Mario, a you know, Super Mario USA. That's quite an interesting story in its own right, which I'm sure I'll go into at some point. I've got the original cartridge release of Legend of Zelda here. That was very rare. That was originally released on the Famicom disk system, and it was only towards the very end of the Famicom's life that this was released on cartridge. So really proud of that. That's in really nice condition as well. So one of the highlights of my collection, that. So in this little cubby hole here, I just have my Famicom. I've got the box for it. Just got the disk system in there as well. I think that's all fairly self-explanatory. Also got a couple of Game Boys in there that I've modded, and I'm sure I'll feature those at some point. Here I have just a collection of Sanrio games for the Famicom. I believe that's all of them, I'm not sure, it's quite hard to find a definitive list. Also got some Namco hard case sports games, these are really good. Arkanoid 1 and 2, which have paddle controllers, similar to the Atari. They're a lot of fun to play with as well. And finally, just to round off this side of the room, I have my MSX stuff. So I have this Sony Hitbit HB101 MSX computer. I also have quite a lot of the Sony branded Hitbit game cartridges for it as well. So MSX is one of my big passions alongside the Atari and the Famicom. This computer does get quite a lot of use, as my followers on Instagram have probably seen. Loads of really great games on this system, so definitely something I want to go into detail on in the near future. Here's another thing you won't have seen on my channel yet, which is my BBC Micro. I have the matching cub monitor for it, as you can see. I rebuilt this monitor last year. It seems to have developed a bit of a flicker again, so I just need to take it apart and work out what's going on. I think there's probably a bit of a dirty potentiometer or something in there. So the BBC was built by a British computer company called Acorn in 1981. It was part of the BBC's computer literacy programme. There was a whole series of TV shows that went along with this computer that taught you how to program it, how to use it. Very, very common over here in schools in the 80s and 90s, and if you're a similar age to me and British, you'll definitely recognise this machine straight away. 8-bit computer, this one has 32k of RAM, it runs on the MOS 6502 CPU, same as the Commodore 64 and various other machines of that era. It has some quite advanced graphics capabilities for a machine of this era. The sound capabilities as well. It's a really capable machine with lots of connectivity and interfaces to connect it to all sorts of interesting external devices. This one has a SD card interface built in, so as you can see I have this menu system running on here that has all of the games that were released for the system. Definitely something I'm going to be featuring in future, and something I want to go really in depth on because it's a very cool little system. Next to that I have my Picade. This was made by a British company called Pi Moroni. This was one of the original Kickstarter units, serial number 5. As you can see, it's not on at the moment because it's not working. I've cannibalised the Raspberry Pi out of it to use in another project, so definitely need to get this up and running again. Coming back round to more familiar territory now, and of course we have my Atari ST. Now, I say my Atari ST, obviously I own a few different versions of the Atari ST, but this is the original 1985 model running TOS version 1. It doesn't have a built-in disk drive like later models. You'll probably recognise this if you've been following me for a while. It's featured on my social media a few times and on a couple of my videos, and just a really great little machine. One issue that I have had with this machine is some banding on the screen, just some jail bars. I think it's due to the power supply just needing recapping, or maybe the video circuitry, so I'm planning on recapping this machine at some point in the near future and hopefully bringing it back to its former glory. Just wanted to say a little something about some of the artwork I have around the room here as well, which you may have spotted in the background. I have a collection of Famicom disk system posters which I've framed. I also have some original Japanese laser discs, so I've got Alien, Demolition Man, Blade Runner. I have a few more in storage as well, and I like to rotate them around, but just seriously short of wall space really at the moment, just to have those on display. This is my Mr. Driller arcade PCB. I have it hooked up to something called a Supergun. Now the Supergun allows you to connect arcade PCBs to a Neo Geo controller and to your TV, and basically play it as if it was a home console essentially. This is a video that I have in production at the moment that I'm just capturing some footage for. Really cool thing to play with. I have a couple of other PCBs that I'm going to be hooking up to this setup just to have a play around with. So just back round to the main desk area here, and the first computer I want to talk to you about is this one, which is the IBM 5150 PC. Now this is the original PC from 1981, made by IBM of course. It runs the Intel 8088 8-bit CPU. That's clocked at 4.77 MHz. This one has a CGA card in it and the 5153 CGA monitor. I have big plans for this machine actually. I have a series that's currently in production for my YouTube channel where I'm going to upgrade this. So it already has a network card and the CGA card like I mentioned. I want to add sound capabilities to it, and I also want to overclock the CPU. So if you follow me on Twitter and Instagram, you've probably already seen me going on about this, which is the PC Sprint. This is an overclocking solution that was designed for the PC back in 1985, and I've essentially reproduced it and had them remade, and I'm going to be testing this and tweaking it and basically using it as the basis to try and squeeze the absolute best performance I can out of this machine for my upcoming series. So I have two more computers here. The Atari Mega ST. This is the professional version of the Atari ST. As you can see, it's just been repackaged in a desktop style enclosure. This one has the external Megafile 60 megabyte hard drive as well. This is my dedicated MIDI machine, so I'm running it with the high resolution SM124 monochrome monitor. It's just hooked up to a Roland Sound Canvas SC88 at the moment, but as you saw previously, I have some other MIDI modules which I'm going to be hooking up to this and various other computers and seeing what I can do with them. Probably recognise this machine from my Sandstorm video, by the way, which I recorded with this and this particular MIDI module. So I have Cubase 2.1 running on there, the full version with the dongle and everything. So really fantastic little computer that is. I also use it for video capture sometimes, just for capturing some Atari ST game footage when I need it, just because of the aforementioned video issues with my other ST. It's just slightly better quality from that one, so it comes in quite handy for that as well. Now this machine you won't have seen before unless you've been following me for quite a while, and this is my RM Window Box PC. Now these were school PCs here in the UK around sort of the early 90s kind of time. This was originally a 486 SX33. I've upgraded it to a DX4 100. It's got 16 meg of RAM, Sound Blaster 16, and some other nice sort of period DOS gaming features that I've added to it. As you can see, I've got the LabTech speakers as well, quite iconic computer speakers from around that era. So this is pretty much a dedicated Doom machine. I've got the boxed Doom games, Doom 1 and 2. I've got Sigil as well, tucked away somewhere. I've also got the figurines and the plushies and all the other stuff. Huge fan of Doom. It was on my first PC that I got sort of 1994-ish. This PC is basically a recreation of that. It's the same spec. I'm not really sure what I can do with this machine as far as the YouTube channel is concerned. It's fully upgraded. I'm really happy with it, other than giving people a quick tour if they're interested of kind of what's inside and how I set it all up. Finally, I just have these shelves across the back of the room here. So up in the top left here I have my boxed Atari ST games, big box Atari ST games. I also have a collection of games by the Bitmap brothers in particular, who were a British game developer, made some of the best games on the Atari ST. Got quite a lot of those, still a few to go, but that's something I'm specifically looking out for. In this cubbyhole I have some big box PC games. I'm not really big on collecting PC games as you can see, but just wanted a few classics from my teenage years. So I've got the Half-Life series there. Quake 2, I've got Quake 1 tucked away somewhere as well. Rise of the Triad, really brilliant first-person shooter, really underrated. I also recently bought Planet X3 to run on my IBM. That's David Murray, the 8-Bit Guy's game. Really highly recommended. Also have a collection of boxed Acorn soft games which go with my BBC system. I also have an Acorn Electron that they'll run on. I don't run these because they're all on cassette and it's just too fiddly compared to using the SD card interface, but nice to have them there on the shelf. This is something I'm particularly proud of, which is my Oric Atmos. This is not just any Oric Atmos, this was actually used as a prop on the British TV series The IT Crowd. This was on the shelves in the background behind Moss, one of the characters on the show. I won this a few years back in a charity auction. It has the certificate of authenticity, as you can see. That's a really special thing and really one of my absolute favourite pieces in my collection. Just moving on very quickly, I have a PDP-11 processor card and some core memory here. For some bizarre reason, the PDP-11 is something I've kind of always wanted to own. I definitely don't have room for one here, and to be honest, even if I did have room for one, I probably wouldn't bother trying to find one because I just wouldn't use it. It would just be a massive waste of space. But nice to have the kind of the brains of the machine here at least anyway, and an example of the kind of RAM that went in that machine. I also have a collection of IBM manuals, these nice big box solid cardboard manuals. Inside there is a ring binder which has all of the technical information for the IBM PC, programming manuals, DOS manuals, that kind of thing. Also got an original PS2 mouse there. I have my Dreamcast up here, that definitely doesn't get enough love. I've upgraded that with the GDEMU, which allows you to run Dreamcast games from an SD card. Really amazing console actually, the Dreamcast, was one of my personal favourites of all time and something that I should probably spend a bit more time on, to be honest. This is my collection of Mr. Driller stuff. As you can probably tell, I'm a big fan of Mr. Driller, the game. Whenever I'm importing stuff from Japan, I always have a quick look on the Yahoo auctions and just see if there's any Mr. Driller paraphernalia I can pick up, just small bits and bobs. Got the Dreamcast game, PlayStation game, got some Game Boy Advance and even WonderSwan game for, for systems that I don't even own. Got the strategy guides that I can't read because my Japanese just isn't quite at that level yet, although I am learning. And of course I have some various plushies dotted around as well. Up in this corner I have some of the books by Read Only Memory, really great computer history books with some really nice illustrations in them. I also have some of the old Osborne computer books from the 80s and 90s, just books I remember reading from my childhood that taught me all about computers, and decided I wanted to get them back in my life again, so I hunted some down on eBay. So there you go, I hope you enjoyed the tour. I'm going to call it a day at that because I have a cold at the minute and my voice is starting to go. I don't know if you can hear, but yeah, I think I've pretty much covered everything in detail. If there's anything you've spotted that you're particularly interested in, feel free to ask me a question down in the comments below. Anything that you'd like to see in a future video, definitely, I'm always open for suggestions. I have a list about as long as my arm anyway, but if I'm making stuff that people are actively interested in, then that's definitely something I'm keen to do. So yeah, please let me know if there's anything you want to know a bit more about. Finally, if you like this video, please hit the like button down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.